Welcome to Eye to Market, a web series designed to help you explore and navigate the successful path to market for your ophthalmic innovation.
Welcome to Eye to Market. My name is Brian and I'll be your host.
Are there elements of the scale-up process that we should be thinking about earlier, such as the manufacturing workflow, the feasibility of scale-up? Are those elements that you take into consideration when you're, say, even putting a formulation together in a manufacturing process?
I mean, ultimately, you do want to consider that your product's going to make it to market. Taking that into consideration, you want a product that's got an extensive shelf life, something that you're able to manufacture, set on shelves, and it's not going to expire in 6 months or a year or so. You want something long term. So when you're developing your product and your process here, you'll run engineering batches, you're running your clinical batches. All of these are set on stability. You're gaining stability data, but ultimately taking it all the way back to the initial development of the formulation, you want to assess and you want to stress this product formulation to make sure that it's stable throughout your life cycle.
What are some of the key challenges that you see in sterile ophthalmic product manufacture?
I'd have to say aseptic processing. Aseptic processing is the most difficult means of producing a sterile product. Therefore, ensuring production process is capable of consistently delivering sterile product is a key challenge. The environment in which the filling occurs must be controlled and maintained. It's got to involve crucial upkeep and routine maintenance of the equipment and machinery. The environment, equipment, and personnel are also monitored to very strict standards, as you just mentioned. All of these activities have a profound effect on your ability to manufacture sterile product. In addition to the maintenance and cleaning, the equipment and rooms must be challenged on a regular basis. The challenge occurs via an aseptic processing simulation, also known as a media simulation. During an aseptic processing simulation, sterile media is filled in the same container closure, following the same processing parameters used during manufacturing and filling of your candidate product. This is designed to represent a worst-case scenario relative to the production process. Once these units are filled, they're incubated, and then it's confirmed that no turbidity or growth is present. This basically means that you have not contaminated your product during the aseptic processing. Another key challenge in aseptic processing or sterile manufacturing is a means of sterilizing the drug product. Most of the presentations that we manufacture or we've worked with in ophthalmics, they're sterile filtered. It means passing the product through a 0.22 micron filter. It's generally performed as the final step prior to putting the solution in the final container closure. But steps should be taken to ensure that the sterile filtration does not impact the final product solution. Does the drug substance adhere to the membrane during filtration? Is a flush necessary, as you may see a drop in drug substance concentration after the filtration? Is reactivity with the filter membrane material observed? All of these items need to be taken into consideration, but this rolls into the difficulty in sterile manufacturing.
So there's a lot of factors that come into going to market: cost, timelines, industrial readiness. All of these aspects need to be considered. When you're doing that, how does an organization like yours go about estimating the cost to manufacture? What's that process look like for you?
Estimating both timeline and cost involves working backwards from the plan for commercialization. Regarding your timeline, at least 12 months of registration stability data are required for submission of your NDA. So when do you plan to commercialize? Work backwards from that date and include time for FDA review, along with 12 months of stability data, plus adequate time to format and prepare not only your registration stability data, but the data obtained from your clinical studies for submission. What are your commercial projections for the first 5 years? What drug product batch sizes support these commercial projections? What drug substance batch sizes support the DP projections? Do you intend to scale up prior to registration production, or do you wish to scale up after submission? You need to balance the need for production and the upfront costs required prior to submission. Determining the answer to all of these questions and more will help you set your plan and subsequently help to establish timelines and cost.
What's the difference, in your opinion, between a CDMO and a CMO, and why would you choose one over the other?
Ultimately, you can distill the primary difference between a CDMO and a CMO into one thing. The CDMO offers development services, think start to finish. The CDMO offers support throughout the product lifecycle, including formulation and method development, preclinical, clinical phase manufacturing, scale up, and ultimately commercial manufacturing. On the other hand, CMO is generally only focused on the manufacture of a developed asset. This means you've got to get another vendor involved to develop the asset to a production-ready phase, at which time you then transfer your asset to that CMO and they'll take it over.
What are some of the common mistakes that folks will make that you see that will delay a successful industrialization of the product?
A common mistake is just not incorporating quality by design. If you take shortcuts in the development process, you're likely going to end up delaying your commercialization as a result of needing to repeat studies, modify your process, maybe modify equipment. Another common mistake is incorrect commercial planning. So as mentioned, you've got to determine what your commercial needs are, and then make sure the equipment, the process, the manufacturer, the CDMO or the CMO that you're working with is capable of meeting that commercial plan. Ultimately, it's not really feasible to expect 52 or more lots per year to meet your commercial demand. You want a manufacturer that's able to meet that commercial demand, but you're not manufacturing year-round to meet that demand. Lastly, additional consideration should be placed on partnering with the right vendors. Each vendor involved in the development process should be carefully selected to ensure, first and foremost, they are able to meet the needs of the program from a capacity and timing perspective, and then secondly, to ensure they can meet the needs of the program from a capability perspective. Nothing's worse than kicking off a program with a vendor and months down the line, you realize that vendors can't meet your needs. These are months lost that you just can't recover. And most of our timelines are very critical. Everyone wants to get to market as fast as possible. So losing months or years based on a simple mistake, that's a big deal.
What are some of the key components of that request for proposal that you would typically advise your client to pay special attention to?
Yeah, I like to establish an RFP with two major points of focus. What is needed and when is it needed? For the what, we need to ensure pertinent background details are captured in the request so that the vendors have enough details to adequately scope your program and make sure that they're a good fit for you. These details vary based on the nature of the program, but they should include product specifications, phase of the program, intended market, and any program specifics that may be unique to your product or your process. The when, that can be simple, but oftentimes it's more complex. The program expectations relative to timing should be included in the RFP. These timelines can range from very high level. For example, we're targeting an NDA submission by Q2 29 or Q2 2030. To a very precise timeline by identifying target timelines for every phase of the program. But generally speaking, more information is better.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about sterile manufacturing and industrialization at that next level, right? So we have gone from the lab to the pilot. We might have even done the pilot on one of our Romolog 460 machines. So we've got this initial work going on. But now we've been successful in phase 2. We're moving to phase 3. Now we want to move to using the actual commercial tanks, not just the filling lines. And we want to start prepare for what that commercial scale might look like down the road. So when is the time to start thinking about scale up?
Yeah, you're right. The pilot batches are the first key step in this journey because we'll fine-tune the process. But usually they are still small batches. So the best time to do the scale-up will be on phase 3 because phase 3 will be probably the last studies, the last part to collect results. And scale-up at the bigger batch size, maybe even at the commercial batch size, will be ideal because the customer will gain time. Everything will have been validated, process will have been validated for the clinical phase 3. Stability studies will have been performed also on the same final commercial configuration. So that's the best timing to do the scale-up.
I know it's a little bit of a difficult question to answer, right? But everybody wants to know, how much is this going to cost me? Right? And I think you and I would both have the same answer, but I'm curious where you stand from if someone says, but how much is this going to cost me? What are some of the things that they need to take into consideration?
It's yes, of course, we always have this question from our customers, but that's a very difficult question because it's always depending on the complexity of each project, of the excipient, raw materials, all the mandatory studies like filtration and so on. So I always said that we need to discuss and we need to go deeper on what you are looking for, at which development stage you are. Maybe we can postpone some studies because it's expensive studies. Maybe we can just perform small one, you're on phase one, just take time to do the others later. It's also a matter of regulatory strategy.
So if you were to sit down with a client who is coming to you to prepare an RFP, and they said to you, what are the top 3 mistakes that people have made in the past, and how can I avoid those mistakes as your client? What would you tell them?
The first one I would mention is very often is the formulation. Very often the formulation is done with excipients that can't be used for human. Because it's formulation prepared for only preclinical studies on animal stock studies, but it can't be used for the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So we need to optimize and we need to change. That's really the first mistake I've seen. The second one I would mention is the manufacturing process. But of course, innovators or researchers don't know exactly what are the kind of equipment we are using for sterile production. And so often they are using equipment that is clearly not scalable. And so we need to work again on the process, which means loss of time, loss of money for them, of course. The third mistake, I don't have one in mind. Maybe you have another one, Brian.
I think coming with insufficient information. Yeah, we even see folks now doing phase 3 clinical trial blended with a first registration batch, right? So we see some of that activity going on. So that's what the timing of when we want to do the scale up. When do we want to start thinking about the scale up? How early in the formulation development and manufacturing development process do we want to start thinking about what that commercial product is going to be? Is it at the time of scale up, or do we want to be thinking about that as early as when we're creating the formulation and the lab process?
We should start thinking about the scaling up as soon as your formulation begins to stabilize. The fact is that sterile manufacturing has many constraints. So as soon as you have a formulation stable, it will definitely help us to anticipate the filtration, the storage condition. I also mentioned that, but it will definitely define how the scale-up will be. And for when, of course, the scale-up will need to also fit with the needs for the clinical studies. I mean, ideally, phase 3 is a huge one. Phase 2 is smaller one. So this scale-up will need to be also defined by the customers regarding his market. Of course, what would be his forecast? What estimation has he done?
Thinking about this scale up, so we're looking at phase 3, we're looking at registration, process validation, and eventual commercial products, right? How does one go about picking the right CDMO?
I would say that beyond capacity and even pricing, the case fit. Do they have the right technology? I mean, can they work on formulation? Do they have formulation capabilities? Do they have the unit doses machine, BFS machine, or the preservative-free multi-dose filling line? I would say the CDMO. Do they have experience in ophthalmic products? And yes, do they have a global presence? US, EU, Asia? This is a very important point also to produce closest to the market. And I would say that I've already mentioned that, but the biggest mistakes I see are really selecting a CDMO too late and underestimating the need for the tech transfer alignment. We need a smooth tech transfer.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is picking the right CDMO comes down to starting early and understanding their capabilities, right? Making sure they've got a track record of success in the market that you're targeting, and that geographically they can support not only today, but your future expansion.
Exactly. to be a long-term partnership. Exactly.
Yeah.